Imagine the wide, wind-swept hills of medieval England. A solitary shepherd, wrapped in rough woolen garments, moves slowly across the snowy plains, trailing after his flock. His life, shaped by solitude, constant motion, and closeness to nature, is often described with a touch of pastoral romanticism. Yet, when winter arrived, the picture changed completely. While villagers fought the cold within their cottages, survival was far harsher for a shepherd living out on barren lands. His shelter was usually temporary, crude, and lonely, standing exposed in the midst of nature. These huts were built from whatever was at hand: grass, stone, heather, and branches. To withstand the wind, they were often dug partly into the earth. Dry stone walls were packed tightly with moss and soil to keep the chill from seeping in. Roofs were layered with thick reeds, heather, or sod. With time, such huts blended into the landscape, seeming almost a part of the earth itself. Inside, there was only the bare minimum: a dirt floor, a bed of dried plants, and a small hearth. These shelters offered no comfort or luxury. They existed solely for survival. Their purpose was to shield against the relentless wind, rain, and snowstorms. But the shepherd's greatest refuge was not his hut, it was his sheep. Hundreds of animals gathered together produced immense warmth. At night especially, the flock became a living blanket, protecting the man from freezing. The shepherd would lie on the sheltered side of the herd, or even slip in among the animals to preserve body heat. The smell of damp wool and sheep was to him the scent of warmth and life itself. This closeness was not only physical, but also emotional. He came to understand the breath, the movements, and the sounds of his flock, learning to read their language. The smallest change in their behavior prompted him to act immediately. Yet, such intimacy carried dangers as well. In moments of panic, hundreds of sheep could trample him, and disease spread swiftly through the crowded animals. An outbreak could wipe out the entire flock. Alongside his shelter and flock, the shepherd relied heavily on fire. On a snowy, wind-swept hill, starting and maintaining even a small flame demanded skill. He would always light his fire against large stones, in a spot shielded from the wind and capable of reflecting heat. The flame could not be too large, fuel was scarce, and a modest fire had to suffice. Far from forests, obtaining wood was a challenge. For that reason, the shepherd gathered anything that would burn: dried heather twigs, thorny shrubs, even hardened sheep dung. The dung, carefully dried during summer, became his main winter fuel, smokeless, steady, and efficient. Since it came from his own flock, this resource completed a cycle of survival in the most ingenious way. The fire did not need to burn brightly all night. Instead, he buried embers beneath ash so they smoldered slowly until morning, when he could revive them. For him, fire was not only warmth, but also light, safety, and a shield against crushing loneliness. Just as vital as warmth was food. Long walks, biting air, and night watches exhausted the body, while available provisions were scarce. The food he carried had to last, so it was salted, dried, or fermented. The most common staple was hard, dense black bread. It could endure for days, though it was so tough it often had to be soaked in water or broth before being eaten. A shepherd might also carry a little cheese, some dried meat, or a few shriveled fruits. These were no feast, merely fuel to keep him alive. They supplied energy, not pleasure. Still, even a morsel of cheese or dried meat with bread was better than hunger, and they were things he could obtain without traveling to distant markets. More important than solid food was a hot drink. Water was often dirty or frozen, so shepherds heated it in small pots, sometimes adding herbs or oats to make a drink that both warmed and nourished. This simple liquid not only heated the body, but lifted the spirit. In the cold, a sip of hot water was more precious than fine wine. Night brought its own hardships. Beyond the freezing winds and snow lay the weight of solitude. Thick woolen clothes, sackcloth blankets, and bags stuffed with straw were used to trap heat. But these were never quite enough. Shepherds often woke several times during the night, checking the fire, piling on more straw or wool to keep warm. When conditions became unbearable, sleep gave way to movement, standing, pacing slowly, or stirring the body to generate heat. To stay still was to invite death by freezing. At night, he also had to guard his flock. Predators prowled more boldly in winter. Under the full moon, he scanned the hills, listened to the silence, and watched the sheep's behavior. Sometimes he drew the flock tightly together, placed his hut near the animals, or even cradled newborn lambs in his arms, knowing a lamb could freeze to death within hours. Time itself became an enemy. Every minute mattered, and this is why each winter passed like a silent tale of heroism. But why endure such misery? The answer lay in livelihood. In medieval times, livestock, and above all sheep, were a crucial means of survival. Wool was not only essential for warmth, but also a highly valued commodity. Kingdoms and monasteries encouraged its production. Thus, shepherds labored not just for their villages, but as cogs in a much larger economic machine. Often, the sheep did not belong to them. They tended the flocks of landowners or religious houses, earning a meager wage or basic provisions in return. Sometimes they shifted roles with the seasons, working the fields at harvest, then driving the flocks to highlands in winter as temporary laborers. They spent most of the year outdoors, returning to their villages only for festivals or important gatherings. Shepherding was less a job than a way of life. Before dawn they led the sheep out, and only after sunset did they return to their huts. Their days unfolded on hills, mountains, and snow-covered pastures. In such solitude, they became keen observers of nature, able to sense weather shifts, read animal behavior, and detect looming threats. These instincts could save lives, recognizing the silence before wolves struck, or moving the flock before a sudden blizzard. Such knowledge was rarely written down, but passed from father to son, generation after generation. Not all shepherds worked alone. In some places, 2 or 3 men shared responsibility for a flock, dividing duties among them, one tending the fire, another standing guard, another preparing food or checking the animals. These small teams relied on one another to withstand the harsh landscape. Still, solitary shepherds were more common, and for them, loyal dogs were indispensable. These animals did far more than herd sheep. They guarded them too. Wolves approaching the flock often retreated at the sound of a dog's bark. To the shepherd, his dog was not merely a helper, but a companion. They shared the same fire, endured the same cold, woke together, and defended side by side. From the outside, a shepherd's life might appear simple, but each day was a battle for survival. His story was not just about tending sheep. It was about learning harmony with nature, practicing patience, showing courage, and building resilience. Villagers, too, faced the winter with equal determination. Every task of summer and autumn aimed at one thing: surviving the cold season. Chief among these preparations was storing fodder. When snow buried the pastures, animals survived on hay, dried grasses, and root crops gathered, dried, and stored in barns. Villages often shared common fields, but these could not be used year-round. In winter, animals were kept in stables, requiring more feed and frequent cleaning. The buildup of manure was no waste. It became spring fertilizer, enriching the soil. Poorer peasants, lacking material for large barns, sometimes kept animals in makeshift shelters, walls of hay bales covered with branches. These offered some protection against wind and snow, sparing the animals from freezing outright. In rural life, animals were more than food, milk, or wool. They were vital to existence itself. The loss of a cow or goat meant losing a year's livelihood. For this reason, peasants bonded with their animals, giving them names, treating them as family, and caring for them even in old age. In some villages, especially where winters were long and severe, people even lived under the same roof as their livestock. While odd to modern eyes, the practice made sense. The heat from the animals warmed the house. People lived upstairs, animals below, and their rising body heat kept the home from freezing. Of course, drawbacks existed: smell, illness, poor hygiene. But when temperatures plunged to minus 20 degrees Celsius, a few extra degrees could mean survival. Many peasants accepted the trade, endure the smell to stay alive. Sharing a roof with animals also added security. Their restlessness served as an alarm against predators. When wolves or foxes prowled near, the livestock stirred first, warning the household in time to act. In medieval times, winter was not just a season of cold. It was a prolonged trial, demanding cleverness, endurance, and cooperation. Peasants overcame it not by warring with nature, but by adapting to it. Among their preparations, securing the home was vital. There were no double-glazed windows, insulation, or central heating. Every defense against the cold came from human labor and natural materials. Houses were built of clay, stone, or timber. Walls were thick, packed with straw or hay, stopping both chill and wind. Glass windows were rare. Villagers stretched oiled cloth or thin animal hides instead, which let in a little light but blocked the cold. Door frames and window gaps were stuffed with fabric, felt, or straw to stop drafts. Floors were covered with rugs, mats, or dry leaves to soften the chill rising from the ground. The hearth, often central in the home, burned constantly, not only heating, but also cooking meals. Smoke escaped through primitive chimneys, though often some lingered inside. This smoke, unpleasant as it was, kept insects away and killed germs. With short winter days, daylight was precious. Homes faced south to capture as much sun as possible. Shiny surfaces or mirrors reflected what little light entered, spreading it across the room. At night, warmth was preserved with thick wool blankets, felt, or furs. Before sleeping, people left embers glowing in the hearth, keeping a faint heat until morning. Some heated stones or bricks in the fire, placing them in their beds as primitive hot water bottles. Families usually slept in the same room, both to share heat and for protection. The human body itself was a source of warmth, and sleeping close helped everyone endure the night. Villagers also insulated houses by plastering walls with mud or piling snow around the outside. Though snow is cold to the touch, compacted around walls, it formed a natural insulation barrier, trapping warmth inside. All these strategies reflected not resistance to nature, but cooperation with it. Without modern technology, people still managed to make their environment livable. Life was not easy, but through resourcefulness, patience, and solidarity, winter could be endured.